Welcome to the July meeting of the Human Rights Commission. We are joined by video by one of our commissioners also. So I believe we do have a quorum. Folks get settled. 8, including Myra, and Amy is wandering around somewhere else. I know she's here. So let's go ahead and get ourselves settled and started if we can. Welcome. Huh? Oh, Malloy will be here in a second. We've got a couple other folks that are going to come. Okay.
And I might have to leave early, so.
And Christine may have to.
Me too.
Me too.
I have enough coffee.
You can get validated.
All right. Let's start today with introductions around the table first. So tonight, since we, on our agenda, we'll be talking about, get some information about housing segregation. Tonight, when we introduce yourselves, could you tell us your name for commissioners? And then, since we'll be discussing housing tonight, can you tell us generally where you live? Tell us your address. And why you chose to live there, or why you ended up living there? And any observations about housing from your personal experience? Is there somebody who would like? Oh, now is there somebody who would like to start?
Tell us what to do.
Hello.
Tell us what to do.
Good afternoon. My name is Alan Lazo. I am the chair of the Portland Human Rights Commission. I currently live in Northeast Portland. I grew up, for the most part, in Portland. I lived out in further East County, out in what is now being referred to as the Numbers, and chose to move closer into Portland when I had the opportunity to move closer to friends who all lived closer to town. It really was an issue about social context for me. And really, again, an opportunity to move into a neighborhood that by my choice. And as we've talked about housing segregation issues, I've come to realize that I live in a neighborhood that is changing. Not necessarily by my doing, but certainly do feel some sense of responsibility to at least understand the dynamics that are there.
My name is Diallo Bennett. I'm a commissioner, and I have an apartment in Southwest Portland. This was partly due to it being a quieter neighborhood. I've lived all over Portland, but most of the time I've spent in North Portland or Southeast.
Any observations about housing for your personal experience?
Observations about housing from my personal experience would have to be Portland is diverse, but it is segregated. And that's my observation.
Hector Lopez, Commissioner. I live in Northeast, around 27th and Prescott area. When we first moved to Portland, we chose to live in the Northeast because we were told that was the most multiracial, multicultural community in Portland. And then we moved to this place on Prescott for the same reason, not realizing that Alberta Street was already going through incredible change. And the folk that we were moving in to be part of were moving out, or moved out, depends on how you view it. And so now that community is becoming rapidly yuppified, whatever the modern term is for that, which is too bad. And Alberta is a monster. You all come every Thursday, or what, fourth Thursday or whatever, and just make a mess.
Thank you. We thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Abdul Majidi, and I live in North Portland. I lived in Gresham. I had a very interesting experience in Gresham. Then I moved to, I was looking in Portland, and I drove during, literally during the day, nights, during, what do you call it, Thanksgiving,
Halloween.
Halloween, thank you. You know, so that's what I know people in the culture, so I decided to live in Northeast Portland, and I liked it in Northeast Portland. Then now currently I live in North Portland. I won't tell you exactly where, but I live in a floating home, which is nice, I like it.
On the river, on the river.
On the river, on the river.
It doesn't matter if you told us where you were, you could move and we wouldn't find you anywhere.
Oh, yeah, true. I can move it around. My experience about housing, and it came to my mind lately, because one of the things I did is I said, okay, I'm going to rent before I purchase. So I called about 35 places, and 5 who really called me back. And I called others, they told me it's already rented. When I have a friend of mine, this lady who's from US, they are not rented yet, that's what I tell her. Then one of them actually is hesitating to show me the place. Then I said, it's okay. He told me on the phone, are you sure? Because there are some females also share the areas upstairs, live above you. I said, okay. When I went there, he kept hesitating. Then when I asked him, why you keep asking this question? And his comment was, because of your Middle Eastern. I said, I'm not exactly Middle Eastern, but what if women and being close to women. So I learned a lot, and I keep thinking about you, Malloy, to talk like, you're passionate about it, and for me, as I started experiencing some of the things there, and it was a very interesting experience. So that's about less than a year experience happened.
Thank you, Abdul.
I'm Christine, Commissioner. I live in Southwest. We moved there because my husband's a physician at OHSU, and I work in Hillsborough, a lot of times out in rural areas with migrant farm workers, so it's easy for me to jump out on Route 26 to get to where I work. And we're just having our first housing experience right now, looking to buy our first house. We're renting right now, and yeah, we're just finding that it's really hard to find an affordable home in a good, cheap, or in a good public school district, basically. Way more expensive than we thought it would be, and it's just surprising. So, yeah, and we're basically the yuppies that Hector fears.
Thank you.
My name is Damon, and I live in several cities, and been back in Portland for like the last 5 years, and housing is actually kind of a bit of a sore spot for me, and maybe kind of I've had some transient challenges, and I've also I strongly identify with Northeast, but I've lived all over the city, and what's really shown me is that how much housing has to do with community, how we identify with community, and what that means for the individual. Because that could mean your block, could mean your geographic area in terms of neighborhood group or coalition. It could also mean something beyond that. So for me, it's had to move beyond that.
Thank you, Dave.
I'm Kyle Bussey, Commissioner. I live in Southeast Portland in the Woodstock neighborhood. I guess we moved in there because my wife and I were looking for a house, and there was one we could afford. My observation about housing, well, I guess I'd like to recognize what's going on at City Hall right now. I think that, I guess my comment about housing would just be that we have a lot of homeless people in this community, and that we could do a lot more to help them. And so I think that's something that is appropriately being addressed right now by maybe people outside of City Hall, like literally right outside of City Hall, and maybe should be addressed a little bit more by people inside City Hall. So that would be my observation about housing.
So what am I telling you?
Donna, you're telling us your name, generally where you live, why you chose to live there or why you ended up living there, and any observations about housing from your personal experience.
My name's Donna Maxey. I live in St. John's. I lived there because the house was overpriced and it was the only one I could afford. And, well, actually, I wanted to be in that area because I have a disabled mother and I wanted to be near where she's going to be. But my observation of housing is that it's something that we in this country take as a right, we think of as a right, and it is becoming an elusive commodity. I know that I hope that I'll be able to pay off the house that I live in right now at some point, and I hope that my child will be able to buy one. Young people are going to be unhoused and in temporary housing a lot. As far as my personal experience with housing, as one who has been part of the urban removal, a victim of that, it's not sacred and it is not very safe. So, and my neighborhood was wonderful growing up, despite what everybody hears about Albina. It was a wonderful community. It was two-parent families, well-kept lawns. I don't know where all the crime and stuff was happening. It wasn't happening around any of the people I knew, and I knew a whole bunch of people in Albina. There were incidences, but it was not at the level that it's been made out to be. So a wonderful community was destroyed.
My name is Stephen Manning. I'm a commissioner. I live in Southeast Portland, and I live there because that's where I ended up, and I picked Southeast. Maybe Southeast picked me. Two things about housing. So one, my personal experience with housing in Portland is it's segregated, and it's segregated I think for a couple of reasons. One, there's self-selection segregation, like people pick to choose where they want to live and self-segregate. And there's also sort of like this forced limited options, so people don't actually have a lot of options, and so this is where you end up going. And then the other question about, I just want to touch a little bit about my personal experience with homelessness. I've never experienced homelessness, but I've had some very close family members who have. Some have experienced, there's other factors like drug and alcohol addictions, and others who have just had economic circumstances. And once you lose a place to stay, that stability that's taken from your life, that the cascading effects, even with a huge supportive family around these individuals, that it's really hard to remedy that. So coming up with systemic, community-based solutions for what I think is a crisis, this stabilization of the community is really critical. So I'm glad we're working on this issue.
Myra, do you want to go?
It's my turn?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm Myra Arreola, and I'm a commissioner. Me and my husband decided we wanted to live in St. John's, and it so happened that we could afford a house there. So it was good that it worked out that way. We liked the neighborhood, we liked the vibe, and we had a desire to live there. Also, lately we've seen, especially around where we live in St. John's, we've seen a lot of empty houses. We've seen a lot of short sales and people just basically overnight leaving their houses because they, for whatever reason. So that has been something very real to experience in a way, and also concerning. And I don't know what can be done, or how that can be worked or focused on. So.
Thank you. Myra?
So I'm Malloy Good, Commissioner. I may be the only commissioner here that does not live in Portland. So I'm eligible to be on the commission by the virtue of the fact that you can work in Portland and be on this commission, which I'm very grateful for.
Or play.
Or play, or worship. But I exercise the working in Portland. I live in Vancouver, and I grew up in Clark County, in East Clark County, which at the time was farm slash mill town area. And, but I had, my parents, my mom's from India and my dad's from Washougal, Washington, where we live. So I had biracial parents, or have biracial parents. Growing up in a small town, it was something made very readily apparent to me many times throughout my life. So I ended up living in Vancouver largely because my family's there, my wife's family's there, and where we could afford it at the time. My observations about housing, I think I'm going to hold off on that for a little bit. I'll share them a little bit later.
Amy, or
Yeah, I was out making copies. I'm Amy Samara Kreskop, and I'm fairly new to Portland, and after being pretty nomadic, living in countries in Central and South America. So when I chose Portland as home base, I was interested in a pedestrian lifestyle where I could live near shops and bump elbows with neighbors on the street, and landed in North Portland just on Albina, and that was in 2007, and never really reconciled being there as a newcomer white woman, and I'm sure that's partly why I left and moved to Southeast Portland. So yeah, it felt heavy. It felt heavy, that transition and the speed of the transition. And I think my lens, when I see displacement, is how I see it. It doesn't matter if it's an emergency, if it's an earthquake, or this kind of gentrification that we're seeing in these areas. It's displacement in a way that creates all kinds of cultural and network losses that happen at many different levels. So that's a general observation.
sure, Bill.
One last thing about mine too is that I've been on Section 8. Well, my parents have been on Section 8 for probably most of my life, and due to increases in price of homes, we moved a lot. So probably once every 1 to 2 years, I've been really at one home. So, yeah.
Thank you, Bill. Well, thank you, Commissioners. I think it's a nice way for us to open and get a mindset for where we might be headed with some of the pieces that we're looking at to talk about housing and housing issues, and to consider words like choice and options when we talk about housing. The other thing we'd like to do to just briefly is allow folks, other folks in the room to introduce themselves. And you can give us your name and as much information as you like, and we're going to also have the public comment period right after that. So for folks in the audience, or even Polo who didn't get to introduce themselves.
I'm Mark Fulop, and I am a consultant working with a group called Facilitation Process, and I've been working with the Commission on the Strategic Planning Process.
I'm Yvonne Heister, and I'm one of the commissioners on the Portland Commission on Disability, and I wanted to just come in and listen and hear what you're up to see where the commonalities are and how we can work together in the future.
We're looking forward to that. Thank you.
I'm Mike Tabor, and I'm filming as under joeanybody.com and just recording the meetings each month. So,
which is much appreciated.
Hi, I'm Irene Conner, and I'm from the Independent Police Review, where we accept commendations as well as complaints about police misconduct, and I just came to kind of hear.
Could you all speak up back there? What I hear is a lot of.
Thank you, Irene. Welcome.
I'm Christopher Anderson. I'm from Northeast Portland. I'm also with Irene from IPR. I'm the intern, and I'm here today to hear what you guys have to say.
Christopher.
My name is Kat Gogenauer, and I live in North Portland, and I'm recently moving back to Oregon, so really interested in hearing what's happening.
I'm Lorna Fossend. I'm a writer and editor who lives in Northeast Portland. I've been there as a renter and as a homeowner, and chose it because it was as integrated a neighborhood as I could find when I moved here from New York. And I've been through the 4-week dialogue, race dialogue, held by the office here, and have been going to the race dialogues at Kennedy now. Kennedy School, heard about this meeting and just wanted to keep learning more. I was really impressed with and distressed by what I heard last night. And I would like to find a way to help gather and disseminate information if we can. This seems very important.
Thank you, then welcome.
Miriam Wakili, I am part of the consulting group that's presenting this week.
Hi, Miriam.
I'm Brad Schmidt. I'm with the Oregon Region Star Trail Library.
Brad?
I'm Doug Richardson. I live up in the Goose Hollow area, and I'm here because of the race talks as well. I think Don threatened us perhaps that if we didn't show up. Not really.
I didn't say it would be death, but I did say that you know there might be a curse on your great grandchildren or something. You know.
Welcome, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leah. I'm a policy intern focusing on fair housing with Jefferson Smith.
You met your colleague last night, Evan, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's supposed to be here.
Okay.
My name is Alyssa Cudmore, and just as Malloy is, I'm with the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. And, I live in Southeast Portland. I've been here for about 2.5 years.
Welcome, Alyssa. Thank you. All right. Well, welcome everyone. There it is, food for you to enjoy over there from Hush Hush Cafe. So please, we won't be able to eat all that. So help yourselves. You know, feel free to get up and down and have some of that. So the next item on our agenda is to approve this evening's agenda and minutes from our June meeting. I would like to propose just one small change. I had inadvertently left off Kyle's human trafficking task force under committee and liaison updates, so I would like to put a bullet point under there for him to give us a brief update, if that's okay. And as you can see, it is a very packed agenda tonight, so we're going to try to keep to task, and we'll discuss what those tasks are as we come to them. Any other changes to the agenda or any substantive changes to the June minutes?
I have a question.
Diallo has a question.
Will we be able to talk about what is going on in the past week?
Yes, we will try to do that under the committee and liaison updates. Well, I guess I don't going on in general or related to the HRC. Yeah, I think so. Most of it will be about the events that have taken place. Is that what you're interested in talking about?
Right.
Yeah. Let's try to do that. Yeah.
It looks like I am going to sleep early, so I'm just wondering if we could move anything that needs a vote up. Looks like maybe flip the fair housing and strategic plan one.
Yeah, we could. Malloy doesn't have any problem with it. It might help Mark and Miriam also. I'm not sure why I did that exactly, but because we will hopefully be voting on the final strategic plan, so we could move that above the presentation for a Housing Act. What I will caution folks about the strategic plan tonight is that we are keeping it very brief because we've all had opportunities to review it. We've seen it 2 or 3 times, and so tonight isn't a big discussion about the strategic plan. It's, are there any major elements in it that would keep you from voting for it, accepting it as a final for this? It is a living document. We will have the electronic document to work with if we want to revise it as we move forward. So we're going to hold only a very small space for it tonight. That being said, if we could, let's switch those. We'll make the strategic plan after the public comment. Anything else on agenda or minutes? I would entertain a motion to accept both of those items this evening.
Oh, I'm sorry, for the minutes, my name only has one L.
Malloy's name has only one L. I would call that substantive.
And with that, I'll move to approve both the agenda and
All in favor, by a show of hands and an aye? Aye. Any?
Alan, just one comment. I don't have an agenda.
Oh, we are so sorry, Myra.
We have a quorum for that,
We can send you one.
Can we email her an agenda?
Well, just if we do this again, just for like, just think about it.
Okay. I can read it to you if you want.
No, that's fine. I
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you, everyone. Our next agenda item that we'll move into is public comment. We'll invite public comment and remind folks that we would like anyone who has public comment to hold their comments to about 3 minutes so that we can move our meeting along and allow anyone who would like to speak to do so. Is there anyone from the audience tonight that would like to provide or offer public comment? Is there anyone signed up?
I'd like to make one.
I'm not sure that's how this works, Donna.
Well, so I'll go sit out there.
No.
What would you like to say?
I would like to apologize to all the people who came to Race Talks last night because I was given erroneous information and made an announcement, and this was one of the first times we've ever made announcements, and so this whole thing about the book, The New Jim Crow, was erroneous information. It was not a book that was unapproved. There are 28 copies in the library system. There is one book club in the system that is using it as a book of the month read book. And basically what I was told was that the book, the librarian wanted it, but it had not been approved, which is not true. I think there was some miscommunication on that. So I would like to apologize, and I will be sending an email through the Race Talks network to correct that.
Thank you. All right, so hearing no other desire for public comment, we'll move on to what is now agenda item number 4, Myra, which is accept and approve Human Rights Commission strategic plan, to be led by Mark and Miriam.
Welcome everybody back. Thank you for all your hard work. Believe it or not, we did it. We actually put together a strategic plan in about 8 weeks that I think represents a pretty strong cross-section of opinions that was kind of coalesced pretty fast. Again, the draft that was sent out about 3 weeks ago was circulated. In the main comments that came back related to the organizational structure. Can we take another look at that? We did. We sent out a version about 11 or 12 days ago asking for feedback that had some substantive revisions to that. Again, the deadline was last Friday. I was continuing to get feedback through Sunday, Monday. And so yesterday I spent time trying to incorporate and make a final version of this. I sent that final version out by email last night, and what you have in front of you today is, for all purposes, the version you had last night with the editor giving one last eye to make sure I didn't miss any typos, etc. So this plan, I think, reflects a lot of work by this commission. And I think if I were to just kind of not walk through page by page, because I don't think we have the time to do that, I would just like to highlight just a few things. One is when you look at the whole background section of the strategic plan, it really, I think, does several things. One is it highlights what you have accomplished, where you've come from, and highlighted some gaps in the current public policy. Particularly the fact that the Portland plan doesn't include any substantive discussion of human rights. And so I think that the needs section and the background section clearly tells you where you are today and where you hope to be tomorrow. The mission vision, the model for how you work was again, mission vision basically came out of what documents you previously had. the model for change we've kind of worked through together. And then from there, you identified 4 core strategies. Those 4 core strategies, have a rationale, have a priority activities, and have some draft measures and outcomes that you might want to look at. All 4 of those strategies, I think, are substantive and focused, and moving you from the idea of discovery, visibility, education, and advocacy, I think gives you 4 very concrete strategies to pursue. I think granular, do they tell you exactly what you need to be working on? No, that's not what a strategic plan necessarily is designed to do. When it comes to organizational structure, I think the biggest shift in the organizational structure is sort of twofold. One is a reiteration of the strength of this commission is as it is in partnership with the city, as it is in partnership with the community, and the discussion of moving from a number of very static committees that try to define whether you're standing, whether you're ongoing, or whether you're ad hoc, moving away from that to a more functional model. The committees, as they're designed and developed, come together for a purpose, do that purpose, and disband when that purpose ends. If that purpose takes 5 years, then it looks like an ongoing committee. If that committee goes for 4 months and addresses an issue, then perhaps it's more looking like an ad hoc. But rather than getting bogged down with which is which, the idea was the shift is from static to functional. With the understanding, and the biggest revision was we tried to delineate what would some of those subcommittees be, and the recommendation came back was that there's an ad hoc group already meeting to really discuss that and vet that. And so the idea of the defining the specific committees was revised in this last draft to kind of reflect the fact that there is an ad hoc committee that will clearly establish kind of the scope and the function of the functional committees. From that, there's a brief section on accountability and transparency and what that might look like. In essence, some of those measures come out of, and some of those activities come out of the founding documents for the commission. Others kind of came out of our discussions. So with that, I believe you have a plan that I would recommend that the committee should subject to a vote. The reality is, if you want to continue to vet this document and wordsmith it and rewrite it, that is your choice. But recognize that the contract with us, unfortunately, came to an end at the end of June. And so if you do decide not to vote on it and continue to revise, then that process, please know that you'll need to designate somebody to kind of carry that whole workload on. I don't know if there's any conversation or discussion that needs to take place at this point. I'm willing to field any ideas, and then at that point, I guess I would turn it over to Alan to kind of decide where to go from here.
So, thank you, Mark and Mary. I first want to say that we very much appreciate the hard work and the expertise and talent that you both brought to this on a very compressed timeline, which was all our doing and none of yours. So we appreciate you for working with that. I think the first thing we'll do after I make a quick comment is entertain a motion to regarding the strategic plan. But one thing I did want to point out to folks is if you haven't done it, you should go back and look at the framework for action that helped reform the commission in 2008 and hold it up next to the document that we've been working on over the last 2 or 3 months. And note that much of where we landed on what is important to us and what we're headed to do is in line with what happened in 2008. Under what we have here for strategic priorities, their 4 goals for strategic priorities were educate, research, advocate, and intervene. So our 4 core strategies, I think, are very well in line with what the mission of this body has always been. So I would encourage you to go back and do that if you haven't done so. And to me, it's an encouraging place for us to be. So with that, I would entertain a motion regarding voting on the strategic plan. Somebody has.
I move to adopt the plan as written.
Second.
Is there any discussion about adopting this current version of the strategic plan for the Human Rights Commission? This is open discussion.
I think I'd just like to see after adoption a work plan for operationalizing.
Yeah, and I'm referring to that as a work plan. So I think there are a couple things that we've discussed with Mark. We need to set some measured outcomes for each of those, and then we need to set some real kind of work plan timeline pieces. So I think that there's a natural extension for that. I'll show you an idea that I have about it for each of the functional committees to look at how do we align, how does each work group align with the 4 core strategies, and what does that mean for activities we undertake in the next 12 months, and how does that align with budgetary needs. So yeah, there are some real flex that's going to come in next.
You mentioned even with a full vote in, this would remain a live document. Could you elaborate on what that would mean?
To me, it means that there might be some wordsmithing to the work that Mark and Miriam have done, but really it's adding things like those measured outcomes and adding work plans so that it's all kind of one big document that is aligned. That's what it means to me. I don't think we're going to go back and wordsmith a lot of what's happened here. The core values are all there. It's what do we need to add to do the work we're going to do over the next year or two.
And also, I think when people talk about a living document in relationship to a strategic plan, the environment is consistently changing. And so it's important to regard any kind of plan like this as dynamic so that it can be nimble enough to react to any kind of change in the environment.
And I know I'm not on the committee, but I'll say I think that this group, and I think what we've tried to do is strike that balance of creating some real clear mandates for you, but leaving those adaptable enough that they're going to be able to be adapted to the changing environment. And so from that point, I think this is a fairly strategic document, but I would wholeheartedly concur with that there is a next natural step, which is you need to, okay, strategic plans are supported by operational plans, work plans, however you want to call it. And again, I think that the fact that you have a committee already looking at what are the functional committees that we really need to focus on, that I think are the next logical steps for the plan.
A thought that occurred to me is that, first of all, does the audience have copies of this plan? And the other piece is that I think we should approve it with the idea that we put it on our website and allow it to be open to public comment, because we are serving at the discretion of the mayor in order to serve the public. And I think that the public needs to have input into this document and to what we're doing. And maybe there are some things that we haven't, I don't think that they're going to greatly change what the document is, but maybe there's some ideas that the public has that we haven't thought of that could greatly influence what we do. And put the emphasis on a different level. Maybe we're going in a direction that it's not that they don't want it, it's just another direction they'd like to go at that time.
Thank you. Yeah, Mark has indicated that we will get an electronic version of the document that's editable, so we can also create a web-based document that will be available to the public. Very, very good point.
Alan, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So once what would be the deadline for the committees or the commission basically to have the working plan for each of the areas completed by? Like, is it going to be in a month? Is it going to be 2 weeks?
I don't think we've determined that yet, but it should be very soon, I would say. Sooner rather than later is how I would put it.
Thanks.
Any other discussion, questions, comments before we call the vote on this? Then I say we call the vote on the motion to accept this document as presented as the Human Rights Commission Strategic Plan, labeled right now for 2012 through 2015. All in favor by a show of hands and an aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Abdul abstains. All right, thank you very much.
Mark and Mary, thank you.
We will, as they say, be in touch.
Have we paid you?
Very good.
So we get the checkbook.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we are on to our next agenda item, which we switched to be the presentation and discussion on the Fair Housing Act. I will note that we are about 10 minutes behind, which we will make up somewhere. Optimistically.
Well, I'll do what I can.
Boy, you have the floor.
Thank you. Last night at Race Talks, I was part of a panel that talked about the Lockout series that Mr. Schmidt put together in Oregonian that highlights several of the issues of segregation that we continue to be plagued with. So for today, what I wanted to give a condensed version of my talk yesterday, and what I'll focus on is a little bit of history about the Fair Housing Act, cover briefly the concept of affirmatively furthering fair housing and what that means today, and then move into more about the Locked Out series and how affirmatively furthering fair housing and that works together, and then talk about what I see as some key action steps or strategies, whatever you want to call them, moving forward. So the Fair Housing Act had its 44th anniversary in April of this year, and it was a pretty remarkable piece of legislation. Unfortunately, it took the assassination of Martin Luther King to really bring it about. The passage occurred about a week after his assassination, and it was one of the very first pieces of legislation that I know of that really stepped into the realm of private property ownership and said, you, a private property owner, cannot do as you wish with your private property when you're holding it out for rent, for sale, and other things like that. So it really struck at what at that time was a very segregated society and said, this is not acceptable, and we need to move towards an integrated society. We won't tolerate individual acts of discrimination. We won't tolerate government support and subsidizing of segregation. So it was quite an impressive piece of legislation, and it continues to be today, especially when I look at Congress and think about them passing anything remotely like this. I don't think it can happen. So one of the things that the law said was HUD was created and mandated with the goal of doing what we call, quote, affirmatively furthering fair housing. And for those of us in the fair housing community, obviously not myself living around them, but my colleagues who were, it was very clear to them, and it remains clear to us, that concept means, quite simply, that the HUD and the government's IT funds must promote integration, not simply end discrimination. So that is a 180-degree turn from what the government used to be doing, because the government used to be in the business of redlining and segregating and all those sorts of things. So this was the Congress saying, we're not going to do that anymore. And in fact, we're not just going to stop doing that. We're going to require you to see that your money is used in a way that creates integrated communities. But for a very long time, there was often debate about whether that is truly what it meant and what the requirements were, and HUD has not been very forceful about that. But then in 2009, we experienced what I refer to as a legal earthquake on the issue of affirmatively furthering fair housing. And unlike what people might assume, where these issues of segregation and integration would arise in the South, this actually came out of Westchester County, New York. And Westchester County is a suburb of New York City, and it's a diverse county in that it has significant numbers of people of color, but it is a very segregated county. And so you have neighborhoods where there are 99% white population next door to neighborhoods that are more evenly split, even up to 50% minority. And Westchester County would it received federal funding, and in return for accepting that federal funding, it made this promise that we will also affirmatively further fair housing. And when it made that promise, it said, you know, we're going to, I mean, essentially that means we're going to help promote integration. So our friends out there at the Anti-Discrimination Center of New York looked at that and said, well, okay, why is there this huge disparity? If you guys are, you know, for 20 years or whatever, accepting all this money, and you've never, you know, you haven't budged integrative housing patterns at all, what's going on? And the county said, hey, you know, it's about economics, it's not about race. So we're doing a fine job. And the Anti-Discrimination Center said, no, you're not. So they sued them and said, look, you're lying when you say this to the government. When you sign these certifications that you're affirmatively furthering fair housing, you're lying. And the federal judge said, yeah, that's right, you are lying. And it held up their Westchester County's funding for at least a month. They ended up settling the case for many, many millions of dollars in total, including the creation of several thousand affordable housing units in areas of high white population so that they can begin to be integrated. So when this happened, you know, those of us in the fair housing community were like, yeah, that's what we've been saying all along. And so now it's finally gotten the attention of a lot of these jurisdictions. And there are we have a lot of these jurisdictions here in the metro area, but for our purposes as the Human Rights Commission of Portland, Portland itself is a recipient of this money, and it annually certifies that they're affirmatively furthering fair housing. So the work that Mr. Schmidt did on the Locked Out series really places into question whether or not the city and the entities it funds are truly meeting that goal, and whether they're even trying to meet it in some cases. So I talked about the Section 8 voucher program. And for those of you that aren't familiar with it, Section 8, the voucher program is one where an individual is given a voucher that says you can rent up to, you know, a unit up to so much, worth so much in rent, and we'll pay for X percentage of it, perhaps 100%, perhaps 50%. It you know, depends on the individual's income. And the idea was that people can use this anywhere. Anywhere that you know, meets that rent, they can go and use it. But unfortunately, there is no requirement that landlords take Section 8. So landlords are free to say, no, I don't want to take Section 8, so don't even bother applying, or, you know, I don't want to take Section 8 here, I'll take Section 8 over there. And what the Locked Out series shows us is that since 2001, there has been an explosion in the use of vouchers east of 82nd Avenue. And while west of 82nd Avenue, we've seen voucher numbers go down. And within that, within the Section 8 population, the percentage of African American voucher holders and the percentage of Latino voucher holders has increased, specifically in these areas that are part of East Portland and West Gresham. So when you look at the map, which was in the article, and I don't have it with me today, it's very stark how things have shifted, and we are seeing integration occur in North and Northeast Portland, which, you know, some folks like to say, oh, that's really great, but what's happening is the people who were living there are now being displaced again, because they were displaced to be put there in the first place. But they're being displaced from there and being shifted out to East County. And that is a huge problem, and that really calls into question whether or not these goals of integrated housing patterns are being met. In addition to the Section 8 voucher program and the issues around that, the articles also highlight what I broadly define as location policies. And these are, there are many different affordable housing or subsidized housing programs, and most of them involve building new projects, or several of them involve building new projects. So the question comes, where do you put this? And what the article shows is that for example, the Oregon Housing and Community Services, which is a state agency that oversees some of these projects, 55% of the units that they have funded are in areas of poverty, and 20% of those are in areas of high minority concentration. So they're not paying attention to where these places are going, or they simply don't care that they're going into places that simply perpetuate and exacerbate segregation rather than undo it. And there was a quote from the director of the OHCS that just was shocking to me because it was just like, oh, I don't think that's a problem. The director, Margaret Van Vliet, she's the director of OHCS. That wasn't her exact quote, but it wasn't too far off. And also within the city of Portland, the articles pointed out that in 1993, Portland adopted a location policy that said you can't put affordable housing projects in areas of high poverty. So you need to put them in areas of high opportunity, in more wealthy areas. But they created an exception that said, oh, well, if somebody asks, we'll evaluate whether we want to grant an exception and allow them to build in an area of high poverty. And over the course of the life of that policy, it turned out that almost everybody got an exception. So the rule didn't really exist. So 1993 was when the policy was adopted, and then they dropped it a year ago. So you have a good policy, a policy that sounds really good and could have been a powerful tool to integrate. And if it had been enforced over the nearly 20 years that we've been around, maybe patterns would look a lot different. But there wasn't a will to enforce it. There was no desire or attention paid to it. And so we have this landscape now where people of color are living in specific neighborhoods, even though for 44 years we've had the Fair Housing Act that says we don't want that anymore. Yes.
Who's managing? I would like to know who's managing the entity that's managing both Section 8 and the housing.
So Section 8 is managed by what used to be the Housing Authority of Portland, now it's called Home Forward. They're the entity that manages the Section 8 program for all vouchers in Malone County, so that includes all of Portland. And then Oregon Housing and Community Services, it was who I just mentioned, Margaret Van Vliet, the director there. And that's a statewide agency, so they manage a number of different things. The one in particular that was talked about in the article is the tax credit program, where developers will get tax credits for building affordable housing that has income restrictions on it. And they're the ones that oversee who gets those tax credits. And they're not, they're not paying as much attention as they should to the location of where these things go. Yeah.
When was the Westchester County case?
So 2009 was when the judge ruled in the Anti-Discrimination Center of New York, and then they reached a settlement shortly thereafter. But I will tell you that the problems in Westchester continue. Shortly after the case was settled, the county executive there voted out, I don't know if he voted out or just didn't run, but the new one ran on a platform of opposing the settlement that had been negotiated. And so they're continuing to struggle to get them to do the right thing. But at least, there's a federal judge instead.
Has it been appealed or has it?
No, I mean, they chose not to appeal it, they just chose to settle, so.
So what's to stop Multnomah, Washington, or Franklin County, or some organization from suing based on the case?
What's to stop someone from suing them?
Or one of our tri-counties based on that case?
Using it as precedent.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm asking, is that possible?
Yeah, no, I mean, since Westchester came out, when we go and talk to these jurisdictions, we talk about the precedent of Westchester. And the fact that HUD, kind of has woken up, and I mean, there's a whole other side story about their involvement in the Westchester case, where they didn't want to be involved at first, and then after things seemed like they were going to go the right way, HUD suddenly jumped in and said, okay, now we'll take over. So HUD is now paying more attention to these issues and starting to be more monitoring better what the jurisdictions are saying they're doing, but it's still very, the resources aren't there yet to really police this as much as possible.
So,
I had a question. Go ahead.
for Home Forward, Home Forward, House and Toxic Portland. So, one of the things that they did build is New Columbia, the one by Vancouver, the Home Department, and Gresham. And those areas where we see a lot of crime and gang activities going on. And many have warned of why are we building, segregating, and bringing mixed group all in poverty between what was targeted a lot is African immigrants, African American, Chicano Latino, and the other immigrants that came from other countries all together. And what we're looking for, no management, is a disaster planning, disaster issues. So because I here had is paying close attention, but this is just within the last, 5 years?
You mean New Columbia or this case? This case has been within the last 3 years. New Columbia, I forget when that finally came online.
About 2008, 2006, I think.
So,
Before that.
Before that?
yeah.
I think it was, 9 years ago. 2004, 2008, 2005.
Right. And so, I mean, HUD, like I said, HUD hasn't been as much of a watchdog on this as they could have been. And, perhaps, my sense is that things are changing now and that they are being a little bit better about it. But that still doesn't mean they're going to catch every single problem, or even most of them.
Kim, do you have much more on your presentation? You want to finish that before you take too much more discussion, or?
I can just go over the issues that I see.
Is that okay? If folks have questions,
Yeah.
please add them. So we'll come back to discussion again.
So the three main things that I felt came out of the articles that I think that I want to focus on, both at the Fair Housing Council and I'd like us as the Human Rights Commission to focus on, are issues of empowering Section 8 voucher holders to live where they choose. This could mean a number of different things. It could mean increasing the amount of money that is available for Home Forward to give to a voucher holder so that they can live in more expensive neighborhoods. But it could also mean, and personally I'm very much of the opinion that it should mean ending discrimination based on Section 8. Right now, like I said, it's completely legal to do that. And the way that I look at this, the information put together in the Oregonian demographics, it's very clear that whether it's intentional or not, this is having a disparate impact on people of color, as well as other protected class populations, people with disabilities, families with children, single mothers. And so to say no to Section 8 is to say no to those populations. And that, to me, should not be allowed.
Malloy, is what you're saying under the control of city government?
Yeah.
They have the capacity to decide we're going to enforce that Section 8 has to be everywhere.
Right, they could pass an ordinance that says, in the city of Portland, you're required to accept Section 8.
Let's let Malloy finish his 3, because then we're going to, because all those questions will come out at the end, and I think it will partly define our work plan. For instance, one of the questions is who has the authority to make these
That was my question.
recommendations?
Yeah.
So those will come at the end.
Yeah.
So the next issue gets to the location policy, and there, what I see is advocating with the difference, whether it's OHCS, whether it's Portland Housing Bureau, whether it's Home Forward, whoever it is, advocating with them to require criteria in assessing where they're going to put things that encourages the siting of properties in areas of high opportunity, that encourages siting of properties in areas of high white population, and then that they actually follow through and enforce those criteria and those policies, and not just sort of abandon them. The last thing that I think comes out of this is the issue, the role that zoning plays with affordable housing and thus integrated housing. And there's a ban right now on the ability of a city or a county. If a developer comes and says, hey, here's this big empty tract of land, I want to put in 500 housing units. And if the city says, you know what, that's fine, but we really want to make sure that it's integrated and that there's opportunities for low-income people. So we'll let you do that, but we want you to build 20% of them to be affordable for low-income. Well, they can ask that, and they can provide incentives for a developer to do that, but they can't require a developer to do that. And that's what's called mandatory inclusionary zoning, and the state law prohibits that. So that's another barrier to affordable housing. It's a barrier to integrated housing, and I want to focus on finding ways to overcome that, whether that means undoing it or advocating for other ways around it. So, Steve.
I have 2 questions. You can answer either one or speak to both. So one might be could you tell what is housing? Does it include just homeownership, rental, long-term lease? What is housing?
So,
second question. Is what are some of the reasons that homeowners or landlords give, either if there's some study or anecdotally, for refusing to accept Section 8? What's the motivation for that?
Sure. Okay. So housing. What I can answer for you is what's covered by the Fair Housing Act, and the Fair Housing Act is very broad in terms of what it touches. So it touches all manners of transactions, whether it's rentals, sales, mortgage lending, homeowners insurance, appraisals, so anything like that. And then in terms of what qualifies as a quote dwelling, it's somewhat on a case-by-case basis, but the concept that courts look at is the place that you're providing to somebody one that they can expect to return to, and that they have some level of exclusive control over it. So sometimes shelters are considered dwellings under the Fair Housing Act, sometimes transitional housing places, hotels and motels that don't just rent for the night, but rent, whether in practice or they actually articulate and rent for like a week or a month. Those very well may fall under housing as well. Group homes, adult foster care homes, those all can. So what I think of is, what would somebody who's living there call their home? And if that's the case, then it's probably stands a good chance of being covered by the law. In terms of why do landlords not want to take Section 8, the one consistent objection is the amount of paperwork that goes into it. I'm not a landlord, and I've never been involved in that, so I don't know how much paperwork there really is, but there is some. There are requirements that for the first year that you rent to somebody on a voucher, that you do it under a year lease rather than month to month, so someone will object to that. They also object to the fact that there are inspections that are done. Sometimes, given the limited resources of the housing authority, the inspections can take a long time, so the unit seems empty. But, you know, I point out on that for every delay that the housing authority has that bothers the landlord, it also bothers the tenant. So it's not like this person's living there rent-free or anything like that. They're still stuck outside. So the inspections, and then, you know, I mean, one thing, I haven't heard landlords say this, but I've heard others speculate that there's a concern that they see this as a step towards rent control. So those are their stated reasons for objecting to it.
Give something relative to Section 8. No, thank you.
I'm sorry, what did you just say now?
I said earlier, Diallo shared with us that he's been in a position to use Section 8 vouchers for a significant part of his living experience. So I thought he might have something to add.
Yeah, my mom, she was turned down from quite a few places because of the Section 8 voucher. And I wanted to kind of answer your question as far as why they say no. I think it's just not knowing about what Section 8 is and feeling uncomfortable with getting into something that's new. Because my mom has actually even convinced people that it was in their best interest to have Section 8 because it's guaranteed rent. And so that's probably the reason, it's just the ignorance around it.
I mean, that's the thing, like, this money goes directly to the landlord, it doesn't go to the tenant and then to the landlord. And then the other thing that people don't always realize is that when somebody's given a Section 8 voucher, they have 60 days to use it. Sometimes they can get an extension, but housing authorities don't like to do that. And if they don't use it within 60 days, then they lose it. And the waiting lists are long. I think that Home Forward, they've even closed their waiting list. So if you wanted a Section 8 voucher in Multnomah County right now, you couldn't even get on a waiting list to get one. So, so that's a huge issue. Yeah.
Can you explain again what the ordinance did that was enacted in '93 and what it took and how it's no longer as of last year?
So I want to be clear, what I know comes from the article. And so the article said that it prohibited the citing of, or the use of, I think, city funds for housing in areas of high poverty. The idea being that, look, we're going to put in a new housing project, we're going to put it into some place that's an area of high opportunity, an area where there are not a lot of people of color, or you know, a lot of poor people. But so
one thing to bring to our attention as well is I'm hearing some rumors, which from resources I'm hearing, it's going to be true probably, eliminating Section 8. And that's my worry, and I think we should also start focusing, if it is a true thing, we need to be addressing it. So I am hearing it, that it's going to be eliminated in Portland.
The ability to discriminate based on Section 8 or Section 8?
No, eliminating Section 8 is coming with something different than
that. Is that
federal? It's federal.
Can they reject? It doesn't matter if the federal agency can reject a program or funding program based on that.
But I think if Home Forward were to say we no longer want to participate in the housing choice voucher program, then that would almost effectively close them. I think it's a huge piece of what they do, and they get a lot of money to do it. So I don't see Home Forward being the ones to say we no longer want to deal with Section 8. It's possible the landlords, through the landlord associations, may get together and say, you know, we're just going to simply, as a rule, refuse to accept it.
There are landlord associations?
Yeah, well, there's at least two.
And
actually, there's at least three.
Two related questions. So the fact that landlords are not required to use Section 8, is that a federal issue or is that a state issue? Meaning, can different states change that by state law? Is that across the board, all 50 states? And two, the paperwork issue that you said is one of the reasons. Is that uniform? So like if someone in Portland, the same type of paperwork that someone in Minneapolis or Dallas might have to So can that be also changed at the state level or municipal level?
So at the federal level, so protecting Section 8 voucher holders from discrimination is not something that has to happen at the federal level. It could. Congress could pass a law that says you have to take Section 8 vouchers. But the state, the county, the city, as well, anywhere down the line could do that. And there are areas, Seattle has protection, or I think King County has protection based on Section 8. I know in Connecticut, they have protection based on Section 8.
The whole state or
the whole state. So it is something that is within the local control. There is local control over it. In terms of the paperwork, I think there's some of it that's uniform, but then each housing authority has its own system and process, so it'll vary from housing authority to housing authority.
So if one an entity wanted to simplify paperwork, would that be a county issue or a state issue? Here in Oregon.
I think the authority for the housing authorities do it. I think there was an article recently that talked about housing authorities, I don't know which two they were.
Home Forward and Clackamas County.
That are coordinating paperwork issues.
Yeah.
City. The city, not the council.
Well, Home Forward covers the entire county.
Yeah, but the city who has control of it.
The city can pass an ordinance that says in the city of Portland you have to accept Section 8. But in terms of fixing the paperwork, that would have to be a Home Forward issue.
But even around the state of Oregon knows a uniform. Like what's used at Home Forward, what is that saying that's used in Medford or the Dalles?
I don't know. I think each housing authority has some, of their own little peculiarities, but I think by and large it's the same. And there is a housing authority association, so there is an entity to go to try and advocate for more uniformity. The issue that Alan's talking about is Home Forward and the Housing Authority of Clackamas County have gotten together and agreed on the what's called porting vouchers. So if I get a voucher in Multnomah County, but then I decide I want to move to Clackamas and I want to continue to use my voucher, I can report my voucher there and use it there. And housing authorities don't always like to allow that because then they're paying for somebody to live in another place instead of within their jurisdiction. Yes, sir.
I was just going to suggest that this is a huge topic, which we can really think about some ways to do advocacy on this. May I suggest that this might be an appropriate discussion for our upcoming advocacy committee, whatever the name of that committee is going to be, policy and something. And I noticed what time it was. So.
And I was going to move to the same place. If there are some specific clarifying questions that that we need Malloy's expertise for, I would say we could bring those forward, but we should also just think about creating another space for it, and whether or not it's an advocacy committee or an ad hoc committee that is dealing specifically with this issue. I think that's where we ought to take our discussion at this point. So are there comments or discussion around how we move forward with the work that we might take on in this area?
I just had a comment. It sounds like a lot of the questions are about where is it more described at the federal level, where is it discretion at the state or even more local level. And I know that that's naturally where a lot of the conversation would go, but I'd be interested in learning more about that to see where we might be able to affect change at this level. And sometimes people are just working with other federal agencies, and then gets implemented at the state and then more local levels. Some of the paperwork is a nightmare that's created at a level that could be changed. It's not required that it's that much of a problem. There's flexibility there you're talking about.
2 points. So one is I echo the time issue, but I would also like to mention that this discussion we actually have a chance at this within the commission to have a substantive discussion as well after issues have been vetted for the committee structure. So just put that out there. Yeah. The second is, in addition to kind of looking at the regulations, I think Gallup made a very interesting point about community education. So there's going to be certain things, the committee could look at this, certain things within the regulatory regime, that we could adopt through laws. But what else can we do in terms of educating our constituent communities both about displacement, the causes of displacement, how to end it, how to so that there's community, what's within our community as opposed to just within the government.
And I think that goes back to our what we just did with the strategic plan, looking at our core strategies, one of them being education. So when we take housing segregation and plug it into those 4 core strategies, we're going to talk about advocacy, education, visibility, all those things. And I know we have Amy on there.
Okay. Yeah, I was moving towards what do we need to craft in order to move into action on this. And so just to clarifying things, Malloy, you mentioned these 3 points of focus. Could you say a little bit about where your agency is working, if at all, on these, or do you see these 3 as the gap that HRC could support on its own or in conjunction with you?
So, I think the answer is kind of both. We are interested in, and we're allocating resources, and we have some new projects that we begin this fall that will allow us the opportunity to focus on some of these issues. But we're a nonprofit and we have limited resources, so to the extent that our efforts can be augmented or supplemented by the HRC, we really want to work in conjunction with you all on it.
I have a question.
Okay, Hector was next. Myra, Hector's next, and then we'll go to the screen.
And my question is quick.
Or not.
So does this mean that there will be an ad hoc committee for this?
We're going to discuss that very next, as soon as we get through the questions.
Okay.
No, my assumption is that you've taken a very close look at this through our lens, human rights lens. And occasionally you came close to calling it what it is. And why are we so shy about that language? I think that would really help ground that in the Human Rights Commission if we did call this an incredible example of institutional racism. And we can manifest it and demonstrate that this is what's taken place, given all the detail that you all have been talking about. But naming it and owning it allows us to act on it as we will. And also to be in partnership with you as you determine the strategies that you're going to do.
No, I agree. I have no problem labeling it that. I mean, I didn't, but I agree with you. It should be.
So is this a comment about organizing, how we organize next, Donna? Because that's where we're headed.
Kind of, yes. The comment is, it's a question and then a comment. How many of the commissioners have not been on the bus tour yet? So I think before we get into it, that they really do need to go on the bus tour and kind of have an understanding of the background of what's been going on in Portland, because I think that gives them an important jump-off place. To just start on this without the background information is I think not good. And I understand there's another bus tour in August or something coming up.
What day is it?
August 3rd, right?
August 3rd and August 18th.
3rd and 18th.
One's a Friday and one's a Saturday.
How long?
About 3 hours.
In the morning.
These are in the morning, right?
So we'll get that information out to folks, and we might even discuss, how we move that forward. Anyway, go ahead. That's it? That was your comment? Well, thank you.
Yeah, I just think it's important that we be informed. I mean, because we can.
I love the bus tour. Go on the bus tour. Get on the bus. So is there a sense from folks how we would like to move forward? I like the issues that Malloy has brought forward, the concrete recommendations. I like them, and I think that some kind of group needs to work on identifying the players, understanding the landscape, figuring out who and where we push to bring these recommendations forward. And are they even appropriate recommendations? So that's kind of the work plan for whatever entity we're going to pass this fall. So are there suggestions about how that entity forms?
Well, I just wanted to say that I know that one of us, perhaps foolishly, offered to coordinate a work group on this, and not naming names, but that person would be willing to try and continue to do that.
You mean you?
Perhaps. I got busy.
Well, I think the way that we've been doing things when we wanted to get something done on a specific issue is either be to form a task force or form a subcommittee, whatever we want to call it. I don't think it really matters, frankly. So I would propose forming a task force for fair housing, and I would propose that Malloy lead that task force if he has time.
Well, could the task force just be under the aegis of your job, and the time to do it be under the aegis of your job, and we just kind of be a supporting cast?
I mean,
That's what we want.
It would be branded as an HRC entity.
Well, and I think that Malloy could use some help. She would be interested in joining that task force.
Is there any other discussion as to whether or not that's the best approach? I actually think it is too.
Task force, go for it.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to that effect? Because Amy.
Well, yeah, I don't think this could monkey wrench things, but I can see it also being housed within a larger economic justice campaign.
Right.
Just to throw that out there, that doesn't have to happen first,
I
but
agree with
that's kind of the direction I've been thinking, how do we umbrella in these times?
I think that's a good idea. I think that we have an idea now with concrete goals and jobs identified. So I think that to try to go with a larger umbrella subcommittee at this point, maybe just kind of stalling things a little bit. But I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, I think what we should recognize is what we've just talked about in the strategic plan is that we leave some flexibility to expand these groups, even HTTF, for instance, might expand into immigration type of work groups. So I think we should look at that structure as it evolves. But I like the idea of very specifically moving forward. We'll have to choose our words. So we'll let the group decide their words.
Do we have to make a motion?
I think we should make a motion so it's clear what our intention is, and then we should ask for volunteers to help Malloy. That's my process.
So I'll move that we form a task force around fair housing.
I'll second.
So there's a motion to form a task force to specifically focus on fair housing at this point.
Second, make a friendly, second, to make a friendly amendment to that the task force, not to limit its direction, but the task force should to give it a little more parameter. Would be focusing on the 3 recommendations that Lloyd has brought forth, to vet them, and then return to the commission as a whole with developed recommendations and explanations for those recommendations.
So specifically Malloy's recommendations that he's brought forward. Baby, do you have something to add?
After we vote.
Okay. So I'll call for the vote. All of those in favor by a show of hands and an aye to form a task force on fair housing with Stephen's friendly amendment that will focus first on Malloy's 3 recommendations regarding barriers to integrated housing.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? We will note that Christine Lau.
Abdul isn't in the room
Oh,
at the
he's
moment,
not.
but he'll be here somewhere.
Mr. Chair, while they're gone, I picked up 4 more comments or issues. Can you, for the group, state?
The 3 as I picked them up were empowering Section 8 voucher holders to live where they would like. Location policy, specifically about advocating with agencies such as OCHS, Portland Housing Bureau, and Home Forward. So that goes back to that 93 point thing. And then the role of zoning in affordable and integrated housing, which again might carry into things like the comp plan. So a lot of players, a lot of landscape to be understood there.
With that vote, did we just vote in the task force, or did we just vote the amendment?
The task force.
We voted in the task force.
With Stephen's friendly.
Good. Awesome.
David had a comment.
Okay, this came up in our discussion, or email discussions in regards to this and the task force and the whole concept of the public policy committee. duties being under the public policy committee for organizational purposes?
I think we should pull that discussion into that organizational ad hoc committee and let some work happen there on the org chart. That would be my suggestion and function. But I think we should let the task forces do the specific work that they've been tasked with. But yeah, we do need to continue to work on our organizational structure, reporting functions, and some of those things. So don't run off and do anything rash before we rein you in.
Are you going to ask for volunteers to be on?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. So Malloy, we would like Malloy to lead the task force. Are there others who would like to join Malloy on the task force to be named that is focusing on fair housing and his recommendations?
Being somebody who has actually been in the section system, I'll be any kind of help I can.
I'm sorry, somebody talking, I can't hear anything.
They all just volunteered to be on the task force.
Damon?
They all.
Yeah.
But I think Damon's
Oh, yeah.
about to.
Damon looks like mine. He's a policy head. I would like to too, Malloy, because I'm very interested in this topic and would love to learn more.
All right.
Me too, Malloy. I'll try to make the bus tour, but I'm interested in that for a different reason.
Hector says he can teach the bus tour. He lives it.
All right, and there are obviously a few folks missing around the table who we will inform about this, and we should probably talk in that group about if there are others outside of the commission that we might invite to participate, which task forces generally are open to other members of the public. So if there is other interests and expertise that we want to bring into law.
I would think potentially other members of the Fair Housing Council would come.
Yeah, there's a lot of other places, a lot of players in
Yeah,
this
other
thing.
players as well.
This is just the beginning for us, and I think it's a great start. We got some real momentum this week, but it's a big deal. It's a big issue. And we are fortunate to have Malloy with us to lead us.
I just want to make one note regarding the bus tours, and just want to thank Alyssa because as a tour point person, that didn't normally fall under her portfolio, and she did great. So I just think we should thank her.
Yeah. Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you, Donna, for the work that you did. Fabulous.
Yeah, last night's event was excellent and had just so much good conversation on the issue.
And after we have our task force, there might be a call to have again more bus tours.
Right. I think so.
And we'll do those a little differently than we did this last two.
We'll
There
learn
was
from-
a lot of sweat and blood on these tour seats, I tell you.
All worth it. I think Malloy had
It was
one.
mine, and how do you know?
So I just wanted to say, civil rights and fair housing is something that's in my blood, and it's something that is deeply personal to me, and I'll give you my whole story about it. But I want to thank all of you for taking this on and helping with this, because I think it is critical for us to achieve kind of what we want.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, I want to switch gears and switch us to our next agenda item. That is fantastic. A nice wrap up to the events of the last few days. But the next piece of this is a presentation and discussion from the HRC Organizational Structure Ad Hoc Subcommittee. Part of this
What
effort.
happened to the strategic plan? Did I miss it?
Yep.
Oh, you did. It was the very first. We switched to the first item. Sorry, Emma.
You voted for it.
And we voted.
That's just fun.
Sorry.
Yeah. I had things I wanted to say.
Oh, it's a living document. We can still make some changes.
How was it approved? As is?
As is, yes. Yes.
Not unanimous.
Excuse me?
Not unanimous.
Okay, so this next piece, let me provide some context for what we would like to do here. The first part of moving into the organizational structure is, for me, is figuring out how we relate with the new office. Come out of where we've been related to the Office of Human Relations and where we're headed with the Office of Equity and Human Rights. So tonight, we've had an ad hoc group that we sent out a 4-page, 5-page document, 6-page document that kind of outlines a discussion about that. We'll have Amy walk through that here in a second. And then our hope tonight is to give each commissioner that's here the opportunity to provide their perspective on this discussion. I don't think that we will vote on anything tonight, but simply take the time to go around the table, understand how each person feels about this issue, what their perspective is, and how they'd like to move forward, and then have that captured in a document, and we'll come back and vote on it in August. So that's kind of the two-step process. The third part of that process will be then bringing the document as a group, the document from the group to the office, and specifically to Dante, and working with Dante to say, here is what our collective agreement is on how we would relate to the office, and work with him to implement that. So that's, to me, what the three phases of this are. So I'll let Amy kind of go through what's in the document and frame what this conversation is about. Yeah, does everybody have a copy of that? Amy made some copies earlier. It's in your packet. It's the top of it says, Memorandum of Understanding entered into between the Portland Office of Equity and Human Rights and the Portland Human Rights Commission. Looks like this. It was also sent to you by email. Ashley needs it. Ashley needs it. She can have mine. And I have another. Okay. So Amy.
So before we move into more specifics of the document, are there any questions about what Alan just put out, the intention of the committee and the work we've done so far?
The three phases are.
This open discussion tonight where each HRC member will have an opportunity to provide their perspective. We'll come back and try to reach a consensus or vote on a document that reflects that discussion, and then we will bring it to Dante.
Okay, so I'm going to be brief, and then I actually would like Ashley and Myra to be able to speak to anything about it and the process if they would like to. And Damon has worked on this as well with us. So basically, this was a document in three main parts. Sorry, it's 9 main parts, but I think I just want to highlight a few. Within the purpose, section 2, we just outlined reasons for this, which included a little bit of a history. We spoke about the different purposes of the OEHR and the HRC, as that help define and delineate some of our priorities and eliminate collaboration versus autonomy stuff. So under section 3, working relationship between HRC and OEHR is probably where we're going to be doing most of our discussion and where we want to get everyone's feedback. So within that, there are 5 categories. So in the second paragraph of section 3, the operational agreements between OEHR and HRC can be framed with the 5 categories: purpose, collaboration, authority, autonomy, and sustainability, and accountability. So these were the issues, the themes that kind of emerged as we were discussing what is unclear, what's unclear among us as commissioners, where do we maybe not have consensus in terms of how do we relate to that city office, and what of that needs to be documented. So, and then there's also some things within here that we realized that we really wanted to have discussion about among us all. So that's kind of the overview. I want to let you guys say what any other comments you have that can tag on to that.
Well, I'm not sure if everyone's had a chance to review the document. It would be helpful just to know which show of hands if people have read it. They know that will affect the conversation. But also just a little more context, we did look at other model MOUs for format and content, and some of us draft MOUs regularly in our jobs, so we were pulling from that sort of experience as well. And this is meant to be, or want to be flexibly responsive to the group, but it's not, doesn't have to stand as it is. This is just our first stab at it. We wanted to come with a product for you to look at and just sort of generate discussion that way. There's lots of opportunity for changes as needed based on the feedback. But there was a lot of intentional review of other MOUs between human rights sort of entities at city level and between tribes and others, looking at sort of quasi-sovereign entities with other entities and how they work out their working relationship. And we tried to frame things positively, and also to recognize how we're complementary, but also how we exist separately and why we need to exist separately, so that we're not solely subsumed or part of or could be eliminated so easily. That's sort of what I would add.
Another thing that I would like to ask to both Amy and Ashley is that one piece we felt very important was to mention the budget and the need for it to be formally recognized in the office budget and kind of give a little bit of accountability on that and expectation that, you know, we are counting on it to happen. We want to see it more clearly, and we also want to open the door for that budget to be increased if necessary after we have the budget, like our own budget, to feed it to the office and then show that, you know, there's a need to maybe increment it for years to come based on the activities we're doing. So that's also one thing that we wanted to have a very clear understanding between the HRC and the OEHR.
Yeah, and I'll just say two more quick things. I think it also can, it's a true draft. It definitely can use some tightening up. We were hoping to have maybe a 3-page total draft. And we're not intending this to be a binding document with OEHR and HRC.
You said you're not intending for
Isn't that the purpose of a memo
That
of
was my
understanding?
Yeah. Well, maybe that's something we can discuss. I'm just saying we hadn't intended thus far, to make it binding.
If it isn't binding, or at least it should be binding for a certain period.
Yeah.
For me, if we expect the office to work with us in a certain way, they could just change their mind if it wasn't binding.
We did insert just parameters as to how this agreement would be terminated or amended and some guidance around that, and that would be an area that we would of course want to look at. I think it's hard to make MOUs legally binding, but we would like them to hold to it and be a guidance document to continually refer back to when needed.
So I want to do just a little bit of discussion, and then I want to give each person an opportunity to speak their perspective, but it looks like maybe Abdul and Kyle have some questions.
Actually, I touched on it. For me, is what I'm hearing from you is you guys thank you so much. You worked hard on this. You wanting us to give opinions and tighten it a little bit, and working in the future because we can't bind it, make it binding without the other party looking at it as well. Then maybe after that we'll agree to make it binding or just a guidance document. So that's, I think, now that's what I'm understanding from the flow of this from MOU. Understanding.
I guess I'm wondering whether there has been any contact with the OEHR about the idea of having a memorandum of understanding, because when the question is this going to be binding, that begs the question, well, is the other side willing to enter into a binding agreement or interested in that? Has there been any discussion?
We talked about it's nice to have something already formed, ideas already on paper when you enter that negotiation conversation, but usually these are amended by the other party agreeing to it. There is insertions, edits, all sorts of things. So that would be this next stage after the human rights commission.
So does that mean no? You have not shown this to
We have not shown
this. Well, do they know that any?
There's more to the story, yeah.
Dante was copied on this version.
Oh, okay. So there's some.
Well, and before he was.
So, yeah, the office and Dante know that we are working on this, but we are not presenting anything formally to them until the HRC, like all of us, are agreeing on what the content of it and what we want to propose to start with.
So has anybody heard from Dante since he was given a copy of this? I'm wondering if he thinks this is presumptuous.
Yes, he emailed me, and actually he couldn't be here this afternoon. He's out of town. He asked that he meet with either the subcommittee or the exec committee to talk about it. And I emailed him back and said, here's our process, exactly that. That's 3 phases that we as a group want to settle on how we want to relate to the office, and then bring it to him and say, this is what the group thinks. And I think at that point it is a back and forth. So there is going to be more iterations of this. What we say here tonight, or even in August, isn't ultimately what will happen. There is another party. But really, because of what's happened over the last year, the first step in this is, as a group, we need to decide what it is we want to present for ourselves on that relationship. And that's what the first step is. And that's what's going to happen tonight.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear in terms of how this was begun with Dante. Myra and I had previously scheduled a get-to-know-you with him. And so by the time we were early in the process of this, we were able to report to him that this is what's happening, this is our intention during that visit. So the document may have come to him as a surprise of sorts, but the whole process he knew about weeks ago.
So I want to switch us now to the next piece of this, and it is not so much about wordsmithing the document that's before you. I think the document gives you a sense for what this conversation is about. As Amy said, it's really those 5 categories about the working relationship. You know, do we feel like there's a different purpose between us and the office? What are the roles of accountability? How much autonomy should there be? All those pieces. They're all things that we have wrestled with in the past 15 months since we were told that the Office of Human Relations was going away and our director was going away. So we're perched kind of at this place where we're developing this new relationship with the new office, with the new director, and we want a document that reflects what this group, how this group wants to move that relationship forward. So it's not about wordsmithing what's here. This is a good start. You know, read it, and if it brings thoughts to your mind, then bring those forward. But the process I want to use is actually going to be a timed process for each person to provide their perspective on that question. How do you want to relate to the office, especially around those 5 categories? I think Amy can ask for feedback on the document itself in between now and August. So the way this time process works is each person is going to have 2 minutes to speak, because that'll take us then about 20 minutes. So the second time will be set for 2 minutes. Each person will take a turn as a speaker and as a timekeeper. So if Diallo is speaking, the person to his right will hold the timer and time him. And I will start this timer, and Diallo can choose to use his whole 2 minutes or not. You'll tell me when you're done. I'll tell you when there's about 30 seconds left. And again, I'm going to wait to have Diallo tell me when he's done speaking if you finish early. In this process, we want you to hold all discussion while people are speaking. So let's go all the way around and let folks have the opportunity to say what they'd like to say. And then if there's time at the end, we will have questions, clarifications, and other comments. I think we're going to run short because we've got some other business to do. But
weren't there some people who said I haven't read it? Weren't there some other people?
But I don't think you need to read it. I think that each. Thank you, Mark again.
Thank you, Mark.
I think that if you have been with us for the last 15 months, you have an opinion about this subject. And I would like you to share that tonight and make sure that it's reflected in the document that we bring forward to them. And after this, you should read the document and you should offer your edits to Amy. But tonight, I want to hear where you stand on where we've been and where we're headed. Does that fit for what everybody?
So basically, you're saying like based on the history, forget that this exists, just based on history, where do you think our relationship, or where should we stand?
And then how can we reflect that in a document if we need to put it into words? But today, yeah, exactly that. What do you want to do now about this history and this past and this present?
And if you get stuck, you can use those 5 categories, but you don't have to limit yourself to those 5 categories. Yeah. Oh, you can ask me.
And you just turn the bottom of this to turn it up or down. So who would like to start? Stephen.
Okay, I get to start and then Donna's timing me.
Donna's timing you, and then we're just going to push the clock. I'm not going to throw this over.
Stephen. Stephen, before you start, I think since I'm online, I'll have to wait again for Alan to tell me when it's my turn. But it's like, I can only see 4 of you, so.
Myra, guess what? You're actually next.
Okay,
After
good.
Stephen.
Just guide me through the process.
So what do I do, turn it down? What do I do?
Yeah, you push the top and it'll start the timer.
Good.
Okay, so this is a couple of things. So in terms of accountability, I definitely would like to see the director as president of our meetings. I think that's useful, and I'd also like to see someone from the commission, president, whatever sort of executive monthly meetings that OEG, the Office of Equity, has as well. Not all of them, but the big ones, similar to us. Staffing, I think, is really one of the critical issues, and the MOU does not address that. I know we've had a conversation that we need a high-level staff person, and how that comes about, and how is the staffing arranged. That should be addressed in the MOU. I don't know if it needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed in terms of our relationships. And putting it down in writing is very useful. And the third thing is our public communications. So we're working on stuff, they're working on stuff, we're working on overlapping issues. How do we communicate publicly, together, and separately, so as we're not mixing messages and we're not overlapping the messages? How do we share that communication?
So why should I?
Yeah, just turn the bottom, it goes up or down. Are you ready, Myra?
Yeah. So, should I start now?
Yeah, go.
Okay. So I totally agree with Stephen, and I do think we should add the staff person in this agreement. I didn't even think about that because I thought that it was already secured, but I think it should be there for sure. I also very strongly feel that there needs to be more collaboration with the office without intermixing whatever we're working on. And I do agree also with having somebody present in the, executive committees or something from OEHR, and really for us, for our knowledge, learn and be completely aware and knowledgeable of what OEHR is working on, so we don't duplicate, and also we find a way to inform them in a very real, concrete, factual way of what are the issues happening in Portland that affect or can influence decision making at the office. I think because of those reasons, there needs to be a lot of coordination, like was mentioned, a lot of knowledge and a lot of trust that whatever we say is based on, or we recommend, is based on partnerships and knowledge of the issues from the community and the direct connections and relationships we have as HRC, not as individuals. And I think that we need to have a stronger HRC movement and connection than what I've been aware of. So, I'm done.
Thank you, Myra.
So Stephen, you're going to have to time for Ashley too.
Okay.
Myra, start counting down from 120.
Yeah. One Mississippi, 2.
Well, I want to mirror everything that was said. One of the things that I definitely, we did talk about, and I'm happy that's currently reflected in the MOU and you'll see when you read it, is the opportunity or the expectation that we would have time, regular recurring events where we provide briefings to decision makers at the city level, in addition to our collaborative working relationship with OEHR. That is recognized there, and I think that's really important for all of our work. And I think the issue of collaboration and making sure that we're avoiding duplication where possible, but that we also maintain the right to take different views and make different decisions as needed for the community's needs, we may do that. And just recognition of how we're similar but also different, and that's reflected there. Also in this, more information about the expectations of the director of OEHR and his attending these meetings and working with us regularly so that we can coordinate.
So
This is going this way.
So after your time for me,
Oh, no, I think that was.
So I think that a lot of what people have already said, I completely agree with. I would like to see this reflect some kind of staffing requirements or expectations. I appreciate the fact that there's a section on autonomy and sustainability that discusses our need to be an independent voice that is free from retribution. My only comment there is what we've experienced in the last, how long has it been? 2 years? A year and a half? Highlights the fact that we can also, well, we are vulnerable in that the staff that we are given is vulnerable. And so there's some language that could be included that talks about our role in when there are staffing changes made about who's staffing us and what voice we have with that. I think that would be helpful. And that's it.
So for me, I'm glad I'm before Hector, because I'm going to steal part of his thunder and talk about, for me, having sat in this position, because I struggled having been on the commission when the transition happened and moving into this chair position, really struggled with where we came from and where this is headed. And Hector, at one point along that journey, said to me that certain events occur or things go one way or another, this commission is going to be a different place. It's going to be a different thing than what it was originally intended to be. And I think that's very true. And I'll say that statement publicly. I'll say it before City Council. So I think that while we can come to agreements like this, we also need to acknowledge that that's the case. That we've been forced into a position that's different from what was reflected or intended originally in the framework for action. And those elements are slowly being chipped away at, being lost, even though we try to hold them up. They're being chipped away at and lost by external forces that we don't necessarily control. And so the more that we can do to hold those up, the better opportunity we might have to forego the kinds of things that have happened to us over the last 15 months happening to us in the future. So that's what I want to make sure this document, either this document or the way we present ourselves or the way we relate to these external forces stay present.
Yes. I like the document in that it keeps a transparent relationship with the OEHR, and I'm glad that it does that without it seeming like a watchdog or pet organization. So, yeah, that's it.
I think I'm going to pass my time. Maybe to get your thunder back a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
The one thing that I do not wish for this organization is for it to lose its autonomy. That was always hard fought because autonomy and city bureaucracy does not go hand in hand. And that's been the issue. This document is really very, very helpful. I did read it. It lays out and honors the framing document so well that I really appreciate it. But I caution us about the political processes in place here, and Alan brought it out already. The process and dynamics of the political reality in this city are really incredible. And they'll nip and nip and based on the will. What is it, the phrase that use? They fire people because they work
At will.
At will. Be attentive to the commissioner, whoever maintains this arena, and whatever, do not give up your own identity and integrity to an office or a commissioner or even to the city council.
Sure.
Wait.
I'm ready.
Are you ready?
I don't have that much. I actually don't have that much to say. I like Stephen's points. I like Alan's points. I like Hector's points. I want to make sure we have a budget, that we know it in advance. I want to make sure that staffing's included. And frankly, I don't know that I didn't get to share my ideas about the strategic plan. So I'm finished.
No time.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
What do I do?
Just hold it, just hold it.
Until it goes to 2 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Don't just hold it and keep talking.
And then how do I get it to
Press
start?
start on the top.
Push on the top.
Boom.
So first, I like those 5 points. Very, very helpful, and thank you for working on this document. It's very helpful. So, as like what Hector said, for me, I like to maintain independency. Whatever agreement we have, we are independent. That's bottom line. We're not following any bureau. I agree with the mentioned before when Stephen attended the meetings by the director. I like us to direct a report to the city council and Amanda Fritz, not to the director. Clear role of the director of OHR. I need clarity also what his role with us from the beginning. What I mean by that in this document, what is your role as a director in relationship to us? Also, relationship has been rocky. This is before I left overseas and I came back. I need to understand, is it still rocky? Is it changed? And why he feel from his side that he's rocky with us? Before entering agreements. HR voice to the community, not to the bureaus. It needs to be clear. We voice the community concerns and their voice bring it forward, but we do not voice the bureau's concerns to the community about work, no. This is procedure. We need to read it and submit it to the city council. Not only agreement between us and keep it there. And if it was rejected, this is our document and this is where we stand and this is how we are going to operate. If they said, no, we are not entering this, I want this to be our agreement and this is where we stand and they understand. Thank you.
Still 20 seconds.
And I appreciate it for the 20 seconds.
I said defer my time, just thank Amy, Ashley, and
You can just keep it going. I don't have that long. I just want to say thank you guys for working on this. You know, timing can be difficult. I think that, well, first of all, I appreciate what everybody's already said. I don't have that much to add. I want to reiterate the importance of transparency in budget, and not just how much money we have, but how we can spend it. I think that it's really important for us to know that we have access to our funding, and that everything we want to do isn't going to have to be approved every time we want to spend something. I think that's really important. I think we've already run into some barriers with that, and so I think that's big. Staffing's got to be in there. We've got to have guaranteed staffing, and I think, as Malloy said, what happens if there's a transition? I think there needs to be some language about transition. I also think it's important that not only that the director comes to our meetings, but that we have regular meetings with the director. We've already established monthly meetings with Dante, Alan and I have, and I think that's really important because I think that we need to know what he's doing and he should know what we're doing so that there aren't questions. I think transparency is a big deal. I think it's a real problem when it turns out that, you know, he's coming to us and saying, wait a second, what are you guys doing? What's going on here? He needs to know what's going on, whether he agrees with it or not. And we need to know what he's thinking, whether he agrees with it or not. So I think that's really important. I think that can be in there too. And that's it.
You kind of need to tell them, so.
I know.
Okay, I heard a comment of Dual said, we voice community concerns. And I don't know that this is the place to have that discussion, but I want us to keep our feet to the fire on that. That we need to be out in the community, talking to the community so that we for sure voice what the community is concerned about and not what we think the community is concerned about. In terms of transparency with the OEHR, I think that's really important, that we know what they're doing. You know, I know everybody said this, but I really think that's extremely important, that we're on the same page. I heard Dante say that he did view us as the advisory board to OEHR. So in order for us to be the advisory board to them, we need to know what they're doing. So far, I haven't heard a whole lot of what that office is doing. So I don't know how we can advise on that. Also, I have no clue what the OEHR staff does. I never really understood what the human relations staff did. And so I think that that's something that we need to have, you know, have a chance to meet the staff. I understand that some other organizations have been put under OEHR, that, you know, new people, I don't even know who all the people are. So I think that needs to be part of what our understanding is that we have a real understanding of who they are. And also with staffing for the Human Rights Commission, not just that we have staff, but what are the parameters of the staffing? And in what manner can we support the staff person? I think one of the things that we came up with before that we had concerns about is that we wanted that the person was...
I gave her the rest of my time.
Thank you.
You don't get to this is not the Senate. Oh. You don't yield your time to the senator,
all right, so just
senator from Albina.
One senator from where?
St. John. Originally from.
Hey, see, don't make me give sign language out there on the floor. I'm trying to show up, gotten sophisticated. All right, so I think that the Human Rights Commission, see, you made me forget. I think we need to be really clear about what our staffing person is, and that if we have a person that staffs us, that we have input, maybe not a vote, but we have input into that person's, into part of that person's evaluation. Because that person is staffing us and providing services to us, and I, you know, the office isn't always aware. So we need to do that.
Thank you, Donna, and thank you,
thank
everyone.
you all the people who worked on this. It's a beautiful document.
So, Amy, do you have a good sense for what was said around the table?
A good sense of what?
What's your response? How that conversation captured in a...
I think that with some help, I noticed that Ashley was taking notes furiously as well. I'm thinking more of the first steps, maybe that'll answer your question. Our next steps, I think that at least the three of us should get together and coalesce what we've heard and see where it really is missing in the document and where we can supplement or embellish. What do you guys have thoughts on that?
I think Ashley, you and I should, if possible, once this meeting is done, should try to just arrange a meeting. The sooner the better, so we can have all this information fresh and don't wait a long time to kind of submit the new draft with all these comments. So if you both have time to stay when when everybody's done, then we can set up a time right now.
Is there any other discussion on process itself? Would you, as a group, like to see this document and part of this discussion come back in August and then move it on to a discussion with Dante either through Amy's committee or through the executive committee? Is that a good process for everybody to move this forward?
We definitely need to see the finished document before.
Yes.
We all need to see it before
Yes.
it goes. So if it's August, then that's what we need.
So that's the plan will be, that will be the August agenda.
And I would just like to remind us that while we were putting together strategic plan, that one of the words that we used was, one of the phrases we used was to be audacious, and to recall that.
Can I add something non-process related?
On this?
It's just like one sentence.
Okay.
I just wanted to say it's encouraging to hear everyone's feedback here. And I did take copious notes and check when there was recurrent themes. And a lot of it is actually already incorporated in the document as it stands. So I'm feeling pretty confident about this draft for further discussion, and we'll certainly meet. But it's nice to see that we captured a lot of what was shared today.
Now, I would like to urge us to get back to have the group and you all really think about how you want this paper to be based, whether it be an official document or whether it be a guiding document. And I appreciate your openness about that and bringing it to us, because I'm a little afraid of putting something into stone that will lock us in and not reflect the dynamic that we've been talking about.
One thing we could do, though, is kind of make this document with an implicit yearly revised revision. So every year, whatever happens, we can make amendments and stuff, and it's an ongoing process. So it's established that if this doesn't work, or there's something we clearly want to change or talk about, we have that chance to make those amendments at least once a year. We could do something like that.
I want to leave most of this discussion, because I think it can wait until August when the document itself actually comes out. I don't know whether that has to be decided before that moves on, because we've only got a few minutes left. And so I want to find out from the group, we've got committee and liaison updates and then announcements at the end, which I think are going to take us a little more than 10 minutes, so we can either cut our committee and liaison updates to be very brief and cut out several of them, or we can extend for a few minutes. What's the preference? Brief. Brief? And try to end by 6:30? So I'm not going to, so I have one brief and one extended.
Brief.
Can I just, are we allowed to send suggested wording corrections on this document? I
Yes.
heard that.
Amy, yeah.
Is that okay? Or is that not okay? You can say no.
I was going to say that those of you who want to send whatever you want to, feel free. And we also would like to contact you, I think. Those of you who are talking about specific themes that we're not finding in there, I'm going to want to contact you for some language on that. So yes, is your answer.
So again, extend or brief?
Brief.
We need to vote.
Extend briefly?
Yeah, good. Extend briefly.
I move to extend 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Aye.
I think that would give us the time. And so we will extend for 10 minutes.
Should we vote?
Let's go. All in favor of extending the meeting for 10 minutes so that we can go through committee liaison updates and then announcements? Ayes?
Ayes.
Aye.
Noes?
No.
No. So let's have brief updates on our first committee. So why don't we let Kyle go first with HTTF, because he's got a document that he wants to give us.
Well, you've already got it. I'll be brief. You've got it here. This is the. You might ask what this is actually after reading through it. Actually, after I read it through it, after it was finally drafted, I said, "What is this again?" And really, what it is it's the HTTF's findings and recommendations based on the forum that you were all at, and we really appreciated all of your support. I had a chance to review the video taken by Mike. Thank you, Mike. And tried to synthesize as briefly as possible the information that we gathered there. You'll see that a lot of this information in the background information came from Stephen's brief that he prepared prior to the hearing. And so really what we've done is just prepared 3 immediate proposals and a number of long-term proposals. And I don't really need to discuss it today. We are providing this to you for your review. If you want to go and watch the video, it's on our website. And it's on the HRC website. If you have any other recommendations, you can get in touch with any of us and tell us, wait, I think you really missed a big theme here. This is, our report about what we think the main themes were, but and this is sort of an agenda for how we think that the best way to move forward is for the HRC. The three immediate things that we think we need to do quickly are just aligning with the other foreign-born trafficking task forces out there. We've already started to do that, and so with your approval, we want to continue doing that, and the HRC will now have a real official presence at the U.S. Attorney's Office, at Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, and at the AG's. And so by providing that, by aligning with those groups, HRC really is going to have a voice in this and will participate in this effort. Mapping at-risk immigrant populations is the second one. That's the one that we've been told is the top priority for the U.S. Attorney's Office, Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. They feel like the first thing we need to do is to identify who these vulnerable populations are, where they are, and make contact with their community leaders. And to be able to do that in a way that is simple for law enforcement and advocates to, open up a map, literally, and be able to look, this is the population in this community, this is the population in this community, and who are those people that we can go talk to get the word out and to educate the population. And so mapping the at-risk populations is what they think is would be a huge step in the right direction. And the third thing is really twofold. One is working on a campaign to get the word out that this kind of thing is happening in this community, especially the foreign-born side, and also educating law enforcement and trying to come up with strategies to educate law enforcement. And I really would like to spend some time talking to CPRC members about how to work with law enforcement in the Portland Police Bureau, because I think that is a model that we can really learn from. So those are the three immediate things. There are 6 long-term things that we've identified too, and obviously the list could go on and on, but this is what we drew from the hearing. So feel free to look at that, get in touch with us. But this is what we're going to be up to, and what we're going to be asking for resources as support to help with. And so the other thing is, it has been with all of the strategic planning and everything. A lot of this has gotten put on the back burner, and I know a lot of people have been really busy doing other things. But this is a call for anybody who is interested in participating in this effort to get in touch with me, and we're going to start establishing a more consistent, monthly meeting, getting together and producing, deliverables at this point. So this is really the beginning of the HTTF as we're going to know it.
Kyle, you should do something with this besides share it with us. You should get it out to the commissioners, put it on our website, blah, blah, blah. Everything you can do.
Okay.
What about having one of the things we haven't done is have, what do you call it, press conferences. And I think we should be doing that. One of the things that was a concern was that HRC needs to get its name out there. We need to be putting out there to the community that we are there, and this would be a perfect opportunity to do that.
Release it,
yeah. And that's in here too. That's part of the strategy that as we're doing these things, one of the things that we're doing is trying to achieve the action items that we've identified in our strategic plans.
This looks great, Cal, and I think we should at some point talk about strategies for that. So we'll get you on the agenda again for August, maybe for a longer period.
I'm not going to be here in August.
So we won't do it in August.
September.
So maybe that's okay. All right.
Hey, Kyle.
Yeah.
Quickly, can you email me that because I don't have a copy, or say a website, or?
No, it's not on the website yet. I will email it to you tonight or tomorrow morning.
Okay, thanks.
Briefly, how about our friends at CPRC? They had their training.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you, Alan, and Damon to report on that. I'm going to leave after one minute of my time. First, I want to iterate again for you that the uniqueness of CPRC is the relationships that have been established between the police, the community, and the commission. It's taken a long time to develop that. Without that, we would not be where we are. It's the only place where police, community, and commissioners have a safe place to converse, to agree, to disagree, to struggle with each other, and to come up with a plan like this 5-year plan on dealing with institutional racism in the police bureau. That's a very fragile relationship. And we're experiencing the same challenge that you all are in terms of the Office of Equity, in how that entity is going to relate to us. And there's already a push begun on that from both sides. And maybe if Alan and David want to share that with you, that will be fine. But I just want to share with you the fragile nature of that relationship and how quickly it can disappear if the dynamics change that we have established over a 2-year period. So with that, we have begun the first step of a 5-year plan, which was to have the Seattle training shared with the stakeholders here, and to have them experience that 8-hour process, and then from that, adapt it to our first training presentation, which will be with the command staff of the Police Bureau. So thank you, and adios, compadres.
So that initial training was held about 2 weeks ago and was attended by 20 people, a mix of police officers. I was there, Damon was there, Hector was there, I don't know who else was there from HRC, but that was the first step in that training process. And they are now working to adapt that as a training piece for the Portland Police Group.
And just to add on to that, there's a work group that's a subcommittee that does work with the subcommittee of the CPRC, of the HRC, that's actually formulating the plan, and that consists of police officers from training and myself and one other civilian CPRC member.
Thank you.
And we just invited, extended an invitation to Dante to join that as well.
The training work group. Work specifically on developing training. Emily, do you want to provide us an update on SEGU and race talks and bus tours and anything else that's occurred?
Yes, yeah. Well, everybody knows about the bus tour and the race talks, so I'm going to go on to anything else that's occurred, if that's all right.
Sure.
I mean, I missed it, but I assume you all talked about it, that a bunch of people went on the bus tour. Thanks, Donna. And really nice crowd was at race talks. And that was awesome, and
Really, meaning we have about 175 folks.
it was great. It was great. That was great too. So I'm going to move on to the other things.
Yes.
We had 2 other things.
Yes.
We had a meeting. Donna, myself, and Damon, Kyle, and Donita, who are also on the committee, weren't able to attend. We had a meeting regarding the candidate forum, a candidate forum on human rights issues, and lots has happened. I reached out to the 2 city council candidates and the 2 mayoral candidates. I was able to get 3 of them on one date. I was not able to get Commissioner Fritz for that date, and I may have to go back to the drawing board. The current date we have is September 24th, it's Monday, and we had hoped to have it in October, but the mayoral candidates that first week of October were just every night, we couldn't do it. So I'm not sure which direction we could just say, okay, we've got 2 mayoral candidates, let's just go with them and have a mayoral thing on human rights. We could just say, okay, we're going to go with the ones we have and have Nolan there as well, or we could figure that whole thing out. You do not have to share your opinions aloud in this meeting. Should you like to tell me what you think about this after the meeting, I'm happy to hear what you have to say, because I would love some advice on how we should go, how we should proceed. We've got a date for 3 of them, so.
My opinion is go with that date.
Okay, great. And Damon is working on getting us finding out about venues for the event. We've reached out to a couple of partners in the event, and we decided just to have 2 partners. One of them is the Commission on Disabilities, which, did you hear back from them?
Now I'm going back from Patrick, and I wanted to talk to
Yvonne.
but she's gone.
Okay.
I think they need
Okay, so anyway, that happened, and Damon reached out to them, and the other group that is going to sponsor with us is the United Nations oh, come on, Damon, tell me the name of it.
United Nations Association.
United Nations Association, which is basically based on the UN Declaration of Human Rights, and that's what we work towards. So, and our committee will be the ones to format the questions and create the format for the event, which we hope to be more of a conversation rather than a get to where it's time to say your piece as fast as you can. I don't really think that's our goal. So, we are pretty excited about that, and that will be happening. Yeah.
I wanted to make.
Emily, I have a question. Have you set a time?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
So is that the 2nd or the 4th?
It's
24th,
neither. It's
not 24th.
September 24th. That's the date I was able to get. They've got it on their calendar. So that.
What Emily needs to know is, should we move forward on that day, or should we try to get another day? We're all for it, should right with that. And the person that can't come
is Commissioner Fritz.
So the other question then is, if we keep the date and Fritz can't come, should you invite Nolan? That's the second question.
Well, yes, that's correct. So share that with me later. The other thing I wanted to bring up, and not everyone's here, but I would very much like it if we could get started on talking about our award, Human Rights Award event, which, because December 10th is going to be here before you know it. So I would love to, if somebody wants to volunteer right now to join me in that task force, please do, or talk to me afterwards. And I will. Donna's going to do it.
What is it that you want to, what event is that?
This is the December 10th. We had talked about it at the last meeting. It's the, we're going to revive the Human Rights Award given out by the Human Rights Commission. And we are going to do it on December 10th as a luncheon. We're going to work on getting a location. I think I've got a good one in mind. And we need a committee to work on it. And I'm going to chair.
Is that related at all with the Spirit of Portland Award?
No, HRC, the commission is going to present an award
on human rights,
based on human rights achievements.
The commission in the past, not our commission, but other iterations of the commission, has given something called the Russell Payton Award. It was given out for many years, and we could revive that. These are things the committee can talk about. They will not compete with the Spirit of Portland. It's not that.
Thank you, Emily. That's fantastic. Good stuff going on. So let's move to now, I guess, communications and outreach. We don't have any events coming up. Polo did ask me about the Urco Africa House. I don't know if anything has happened on that front, or because it's this Friday. So
what's the event?
Urco's Africa House is having a fundraiser because they are in a frumpy little house on 102nd Avenue, and there's no air conditioning. And in the attic where most of the staff works, it's simply impossible in the winter and in the summer. So Urco's Africa House, you may know, is a long, steady partner with the New Portlanders program, and has helped spread more equitably city services to very complicated apartment complexes in the far neglected East End of town. So we're getting better park services, better police services, neighborhood involvement services, transportation, because of their participation. So it's a fundraiser. Basically, it's $50 a seat.
So is HRC purchasing some seats?
That's the question.
yeah, we haven't yet because the table would be $500. So I don't know.
Oh, so we couldn't be acknowledged.
Or $50 a seat.
So do you have to purchase a table in order to be acknowledged?
I don't think so. And I'm going to go.
Is there a way? Are they going to have program ads or any of that kind of stuff?
Probably by this time it's done.
Too late, yeah.
It's
Too late.
late.
I would
Is
like
the office
to-
doing anything? The office here?
You know what? I couldn't wait anymore.
Yeah.
Run on my own.
I'm interested. My budget is not. So I would love to represent HRC. I think that we need to have several of us, even though we don't get a table, but at least several of us there. representing the HRC.
Bring your banner up, we can get that on the wall.
Where is it, Dial?
It's in the room.
There's a little room next to Dante's office.
Is there any interest other than Donna and, or is
When?
Can I hear when and where?
Yeah,
What
exactly.
time?
Friday night, it's this Friday,
Oh, yeah.
dinner time,
What
Where?
time?
6 o'clock at
You know, the meeting hall next to Oregon.
On MLK.
Convention Center.
It's where?
Oh.
the Ambridge
Ambridge.
Oh, okay.
Center, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to make it.
I think it's important from a point of view to show some faces to show.
So
And
can
more
we
than just mine.
vote to have Donna represent us there?
Well, I think it's more than just my face needs to show. I mean, when you know, and I know it's last minute, but I still think. Anybody else who can go?
Donna needs a date.
Donna, well, okay, yeah, all right. I need a date. Anybody else who can go?
Is this an annual?
No, this is the first ever.
Well, it's the first ever.
So if, okay, I will be happy to go. I think maybe we need to have some kind of commendation or something said from the Human Rights Commission based on the what they're saying or something, I don't know who can draft that. I don't know the hereby language. But
And let me help you get in the program somehow. If
Okay.
you or the two of you go, we'll find a way to do this.
Who else is going? Who else is going? Emily, did you say?
No, I can't.
I think Diallo ought to go because.
Can you, Diallo?
You didn't ask me, but I think we need that generation.
Can you go?
I might. I don't know my schedule for Friday. That's the thing. Is why I said yeah.
That's why you bring the calendar, buddy.
Why is my phone? I just didn't want to pull it out.
I'm happy to pick you up.
Yeah. Okay. Let me check into it on.
Can we do that, Alan?
Do we want to, as a group, send 2 representatives to the Rico Africa House event? $100?
Sure.
We need to have some kind of status or something.
What are we talking about when we say we want to see?
Well, just something so that we officially, one of my pushes has been for us to have more visibility with community groups.
She means like an official statement from the HRC supporting their work.
Right,
That would go where?
It could
To
be read
them,
from
to
the
put in their
podium, or they
book.
could have it and they could read it. We could send it to them. I'm with
Do
you.
they want to do that? Is that something that we can have? I mean,
I'm
can we
suggesting
inject ourselves into their
Just make it
program?
happen.
Yeah.
So if someone is sharing their largesse and saying they think you're wonderful, are you going to question whether or not you want to hear it or not? I think not. You're going to just say, send me the things that you think I'm wonderful.
This is happening in future ways.
Okay, here, may I raise my hand to make a
We can
suggestion?
make it happen.
My suggestion would be that maybe we ask Polo to write a paragraph for us and
He
send
said
it.
he would.
So there we go. And send it out to the exec committee and we'll approve it.
And then if somebody could stand up and say yes.
I'll be happy to stand up and say it. I went to Toastmasters.
Nice.
You can insert it in books. I mean, if there's print material already going out, it can be an insert into it if it's already gone printed.
It would be an honor to have you.
Thank you. It would be an honor to do that.
So that's the only event for now. So there's 2 big announcements. One is that we are presenting our annual report to council on Wednesday, July 18th, and it's time certain at 2 o'clock. Time certain doesn't mean it happens at 2 o'clock. It means it happens no sooner than 2 o'clock. But 2 o'clock is also the convening of the afternoon session, so it should happen right then. We are presenting as part of OAHR bringing their strategic plan forward. The plan right now is that I'm going to give an introduction. Probably Hector will introduce someone from the Portland Police Bureau to talk about their training to represent the CPRC. And then I think Emily is going to talk about the CEGU events that are coming, that have been and are coming up. We only have about 10 minutes, so otherwise I'd invite you all to come and
You
give
should
a
all
shout out.
come and be there.
But do come and be there.
I'm planning on being there for that.
Yes,
Yeah.
so that's the first big announcement. The second big announcement is that in August we are meeting out. We are meeting at the
Oregon Jewish Museum,
Oregon Jewish Museum.
hosted by the Oregon Holocaust Resource Center. We'll start our meeting at 4 at the Oregon Holocaust Memorial in Washington Park.
And you will get details on all of that, and thank you for reminding me, I forgot to mention all of that. But we will begin our meeting in Washington Park. The Oregon Jewish Museum is quite close to Washington Park, and it has a parking lot. So it's in 19th and Kearney. And so then we will move to the, and we will definitely have the director of the Oregon Holocaust Resource Center with us at the meeting and at the memorial. I'm hoping we can get a survivor to be there as well. And I was on the committee to build that memorial from the minute it started, so I can walk you through it too. But Sonia Marie will also be there. So it's an opportunity just to kind of open our community to you guys.
Those are the big announcements. We are 1 minute over our 10 minutes. Are there some other brief announcements? I know Diallo has a desire to talk about some other items too, but let's get these in. Don?
Very briefly, we were talking about law enforcement education, and this is an outcome of our bus tour, that there's a person who's working at the police department that was saying, hey, I think the bus tour is extremely important. I think that race talks is extremely important, and I would like to have this be a regular part of what the police force is encouraged to go through to get more education. So that's something that the Human Rights Commission is kind of responsible for. I would also like to say thank you for the food. It was wonderful. We didn't have to bite on you. And I would like to encourage us to have food every month from a different ethnic locale, because I think it's important if we are representing, if we are part of the Human Rights Commission, to at least start with that small point of food.
We buy from immigrant family-owned businesses.
Great. So never mind.
Mr. Turner.
Monday, August 6th, the city is holding their legislative agenda meeting, so we should probably be there. And I'll ask you to be there, I'm going to go back, but we should have some sort of representation there.
There was an email sent out about that already, right?
Yes. Is that the one that's from 6 to 8?
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm going to be sending another email that I got for different things, but I know it's late. I'll just forward it to all of you and see what.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Packed in a lot tonight. We are adjourned. Do y'all want to throw anything out for us?
No.
Come on.
Well, it's more than a minute.
Look, he's got a whole page of stuff.
Yeah, it's more than a minute. You sure? Can I take
You got 60 seconds. Come on, hit it.
There you go. 60 seconds? Okay, well, lunches are proving to be effective. The ones that Amy and Myra are putting together. They're allowing people to open up and disclose information, and it's allowing really awesome bonding. Pride, I take full responsibility for not having the dinner. I'm sorry. My phone died as soon as I got into downtown, and it was important to me. Yeah. CIO happened right after my house was burglarized, and so I couldn't come. That was why I did the CIO event. Bus tours were eye-opening. Just knowing Portland as a history of discrimination is a lot different than actually being able to be there, see it, and be in the moment physically and hearing testimony. It made the history feel real as present, and for me that kind of left hope that the injustices of today could be looked at as past bumps that we've overcome. And lastly, some of you guys might remember the first meeting when I read a part of an essay that I wrote for a scholarship. And it may not have made much sense then, plus I left some big points out, but it was really enlightening about my character and my goals, and I got the scholarship.
Wow.
25 people out of 300 were chosen, and it pays my tuition until I graduate.
Whoa! That's huge.
Congratulations.
We're jumping off the tables on that.
That's the reason why I want to say this is because, Damon, formally, I want to thank you for your recommendation letter. It was really appreciated, and I will absolutely pay forward.
Awesome.
Nice.
Wow.